Let's break the mold, start believing, and stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Welcome to Wild on 7, presented by Pilot Games. We're here until it's here.
All right, welcome back. This is Wild on 7th, your favorite Wild podcast. We appreciate you tuning in for this post-mortem edition. Presented by Pilot Games, our good friends at Pilot Games. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. But Kinger, let's not beat around the bush. The season ended much too quickly, and there's going to be a lot of fans that are going to be screaming into their listening devices right now saying, "I told you so, Ryan." John, you guys are tools for trying to make me believe otherwise. The Wild, they had moments there. I think Dallas was the better club. That by the end of this series, that was the case. But let's just keep it simple right now. Let's dissect game number 6 and the chances that the Wild had before they dropped the puck for game 6. So how was the building in your eyes? Like, how was the atmosphere?
Building was good. The crowd was similar to the Friday before, and I judge this very scientifically, Ryan. So I saw lots of people, mostly women, walking into Herbie's, and when they would walk in, they were screaming, "Hey!" And then their friends would come up to them, and like people were on their way well before TJ Hawkinson pushed them over the edge. So I thought there's two things at play though. 8:40 start, juiced up crowd, ready to go. And then, you know that greatest hits album, Now That's What I Call Music? We literally put together a greatest hits of all of the things that will deflate a home crowd. They scored on the first shot. We had a goal in the last point-something seconds. And so we had daggers all over the place.
But that was as the game went along, but yeah.
But it was, I would say, at the start, the first 5 minutes, we really were buzzing. I mean, there was until that goal went in, all accounts that I was like, we're winning this game.
There was no nervous energy.
I know. And I can only speak from my own experience. I was more nervous the previous Sunday, probably because as a Minnesota fan, we can't have nice things. And so we were up 2-1. Had we won that Sunday game, it's like, it's a whole different script. It's a world we're not familiar with. This game, okay, backs against the wall. I was at the game when they played Vegas a couple years earlier. I'm like, just win one, and we'll see what happens on Sunday. So I found myself much more at ease emotionally. But, then the couple goals there, and then you start kind of thinking, here we go again. The definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So
I think you usually have a pretty good read on all that. I just don't know that was a good read from you right there. How about the boos after the first period?
Didn't even hear them.
Didn't hear them?
No. And I was surprised. You said that
because you were probably
after.
booing.
I was not booing. I'll get into what type of fan I am, but I stay till the end. I don't clap after a team is eliminated and they're at center ice putting their sticks in the air. I stay there and see them and watch them, but I don't clap just because it feels weird, The
crowd is no different than a player. You're going to face adverse situations throughout a deep run into the playoffs, much like a player, much like a team is. So Dallas comes out, and the Wild miss a wide-open net off Hartman's stick, and then Rupe Hintz goes down seconds later and scores. That doesn't mean the game's over. That's an adverse situation that, unfortunately, the crowd has to face and overcome. I don't think it did that. Instead, it caved under the pressure. So as long as we're all out there calling spades spades, the fans could have done a better job too. The players all went in there this morning, and they all owned that they weren't good enough, and we'll have to talk about what not good enough means at some point, I think. But the fans can't be booing in a 1-0 game, game 6 at home, down 3-2, and then think that, okay, everything's going to be rosy when they come out of the locker room.
Honestly, didn't hear it after the first period. I did hear it after the second. And some of that might have had to do with the fact that they got scored on in the last few seconds. But you do see a pattern on that, I guess, right? Boston was booed off the ice, and guess what? Their playoff series ended. So you're saying it's the fans' fault that we lost?
Well, I think that they have a hand in it. That's the whole reason we have this podcast.
Wow, this
As
will
a
go
team,
over
you
well.
you feel nervous energy at times.
That's
And
Ryan Carter. You can find him on
if
social
you're home
media.
building, 100%. I'll own that. I believe that too. Why do championships follow cities? Like, why do cities get multiple championships? Once you believe that you can win and you believe that you come back and that you're not out of it until it's officially over, I think that's when you win. That's when those things change. But Minnesota still has that, and we're trying to break the mold. They still have it where we knew this was going to happen. We never should have invested in this hockey club. Rupe Hintz scores on the first shot. I actually saw this in my nightmare last night. Why are we here?
Well, I want to explain how it feels as a fan. So I did. I went to the Bible for this. This is the New Testament. This is from the.
You can't waffle back and forth.
Just
You
hold
can't
on.
be
This
like,
is
I
from-
want this to be Old Testament and then quote New
No,
Testament.
This is from the Book of Morgan. It's called Band-Aid on a Bullet Hole.
Morgan Wallen?
Yes, he's one of the new apostles. Girl, since you left me, been trying to forget we ever became what we were. That's kind of how I started to feel. And I poured some whiskey on places you kissed me, tried to wash off all the hurt. But ain't nothing working. I've lived out the words in 1,000 old sad country songs. But whenever I try to move on, it's like trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole.
Dude, you're so funny.
That's what it felt like.
Dude, you're so funny.
That's what it felt like. You honestly
probably sat there with a tub of ice cream,
You can't
listening
say,
to country music after they lost.
You can't say that it was the
Unbelievable.
fans that were completely. Well, I guess if we believe in the symbiosis that we preach, could the fans have been better on Friday?
I don't know that they could have been better, but hold on. Let's just actually look around the league real quick. Did you see like Winnipeg, the streets of Winnipeg, when Winnipeg was on the road? And I actually have a theory. I'm going to compound on this. I'm going to continue to go.
Well, that's
Did
a whole
you see
different.
the Dallas Courtyard? Or I'm not Dallas Courtyard. I'm sorry.
Toronto?
Toronto.
Yeah, amazing.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of pressure in Toronto.
and they've been having this problem for 18 years, not for. We won a playoff series 7, 8 years ago.
And they broke through.
They did, and we should get into how they broke through on this podcast. But I need you to go through this hypothesis because, okay, there is an element in the Minnesota fan that says, show me what kind of night we're having. That's for sure there.
Right.
And I don't know if that's there with every fan base. It's a little bit of like, oh, okay. There's some scar tissue. You know, I've used this metaphor. If you don't win the cup, it's like dating a girl for a year. You're never going to get the time back.
Okay.
And so she's not the one you're going to marry. So like, and then, so when something starts to happen, that's like some baggage you might've had, like, oh, she's talking about her mom again. And I remember like, that's an issue. It's a trigger. Yeah. There's some damage there. There's some damage to the fan base.
So if we're going to use analogies, the crowd, Minnesota sports fans are Ecker's leg. You feel good. It's fun. You can go out and skate and practice, and all of a sudden the game rolls around and things get tight. Pressure comes, and then boom, 19 seconds, you're done. That's it. You're over. That's the Minnesota fans in general. You say you're okay. You say you're good to go. Then the pressure hits, and all of a sudden you're not. It's not okay anymore. You're fractured.
Okay,
You're
let me-
hurt,
let
and
me-
you need to heal that fracture.
Let me explain something.
And though I understand it's been painful, the Twins haven't won a playoff game. They're 0 for 16 or something
18.
like that. 18. The Vikings are the same. The Wild fall into the same camp. They can't get out of the first round. I'm from White Bear Lake. I'm the same. They can't win the first game of the state tournament. Minnesota State couldn't win the first game or get to a national tournament. Dude, I've been there before too. But what I also believe over time is that that's all because you have these mentalities and these negative fulfilling prophecies where eventually that's what's going to happen. And fans go into these situations with a fractured leg. The first twist they have, boom, it cracks. I'm out. Oh my gosh, somebody get me the doctor.
Okay. Well, how do we work on that, right? Because now you got to remember, most of the people, a lot of the people we're talking to have never experienced any winning. This is like a bunch of people that have been in jail their whole life, and you're like trying to get them to like use a credit card, and they're like, "Oh, when I went into jail, they didn't have credit cards. What's a credit card?" They don't even know. Like they've never had nice things. They've never had a promise come true. They've never been fulfilled. They didn't win the Stanley Cup like you did. So they don't even know how to do it.
Right.
And so the only wisdom I've been able to pull out of that, I wrote down, nothing is nothing. And there's a Macho Man clip where he's drinking all of these creams and he starts screaming, nothing is nothing. And part of that is everything we know as a fan, it's worthless. It doesn't mean anything because we haven't experienced the highest level. So you almost have to just be like scorched earth. Like last year doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happened with Talbot. It's not related to this year. It doesn't matter. None of that stuff's connected because we don't know winning until we see it. And the thing I don't believe is I don't believe in Boston when they first started becoming a winning town, or Tampa Bay. I just don't know if all of a sudden like 10 rows of fans were like, hey, you know what? We've lost since we traded Babe Ruth, but like, you know, here's a Jolly Rancher. It's sour apple. Let's really turn it up a notch.
So you think there's no correlation?
I do believe there's a correlation.
Okay, that's what we're talking about.
Or I wouldn't be doing this podcast. But I think you can get losing on you as a fan base and as a team. It's no different than if you stepped in some poop on your driveway, some dog poop, I hope, not human poop, although sometimes it feels like human poop. But if you get some dog poop on you, it's on you. You got losing on you. Billy Guerin doesn't have a lot of losing on him before he comes here. Now he's probably at the point where he's looking around going, Jesus, where am I? What is this purgatory? And I'm trying to figure out how to mentally trick myself.
Bite your tongue and don't say you're in Minnesota. Don't like that's all part of it for me too. Is you like people find comfort in that. Mentally, you have to be a little bit stronger and like not play this game like everybody should feel bad for you because you haven't won.
Oh, I don't believe me. I don't. I want it to be over so bad.
Here's the issue. Until you're at the buffet, until you're out there with your friends, and until you see the tray in the middle and there's one piece left, there's one nacho left, there's one wing left, there's one donut left in the tray. Until Minnesota says, and there's a person
that's my chip.
That's mine, I'm taking it. You're not going to win.
Yeah.
Minnesota needs that mentality. Not what's everybody going to think about me? How are we going to do this? They need to take that last nacho and eat it.
Yeah, and I will. I'm gonna
not be afraid to be.
I'm gonna confess something to you. I want you to go easy on me though. So it got quiet in the building after that first goal, and it was quiet for a little period, and then in the corner. So it would have been in the would have been on the right side of, I don't know how to say Ottinger, whatever. Somebody started, let's go wild, and it wasn't quite catching on. And rather than stand up and do the same thing and try to help it go, I did, and I had a little thought in my head like, that's kind of sad that that's not going as well as it should be. I hope it gets going more later, and I'll be a part of it when it does.
But I don't want to stand up and do that right now.
Exactly. I did definitely let them. I was sort of like, yeah, that didn't catch hold. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I could have been better.
I'm done chewing fan ass, but I do think that does play a role in it. And I think that the energy of a building, again, like you would walk into your friends' houses. Think about 5 different friends. It has different energy in each house, and how you behaved in each house would change based on the energy of that place. If you felt comfortable going into the refrigerator at that one friend's house, you would do that, right? If you didn't at somebody else's, you wouldn't go in there. And there's just different energies that affect the way that you behave. I think that there's an energy within certain buildings. You have all these people together, and the overarching energy in there does have influence on people and players on the ice. I think that. I could be entirely wrong. That's why I say, fans, you should see yourself as the 7th person. If you were part of this team, how would you behave? Would you go into the locker room at the intermission and call everybody out one by one? Say, you're terrible, you're terrible, you're terrible. No, you wouldn't.
No.
And I get it. I get the other side of this totally, where you expect more. That's not your job, all this other stuff. I just think that the way to win, the way to get there is a different path. That's my thought process on it.
I think the thing I will give you is in Minnesota right now, because of our shared history, there is 1000% an element of the team needs to show me
Mm-hmm.
what type of night we're having. And the second it's not a positive thing, we all very easily can tap into a memory bank to go, oh, it's going to be one of those types of nights. And that happens in an instant.
I also understand the ease there. Like you
In
go
an
through
instant.
It. Yeah.
It's like, okay,
Minneapolis Miracle.
okay, this
Going
is
on.
gonna be hard.
So
I'm not sure we're gonna do this.
I have another theory that I want to run past you, and we'll get Burnside in here. I'm curious his thoughts on this one. So there's a difference between excuses and reasons, and the line I think is very thin, right? At some point, these players are all down there saying today as they're leaving their availability, like there's no excuse. No, that's true. You're not making excuses, and you shouldn't make excuses. But the fact of the matter is there truly is a reason why you didn't win. And somebody has to come up with what that reason is, right?
And Ryan Carter thinks it's the fans.
No, well, no, but I think that they could help. That's part of it.
Well, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think we could improve the situation.
Trying to break the mold. We could be better.
Yeah, I
Could be
think
better.
that's-
But I want to get back to this theory. So, and back to the Wild not having like this massive fan base in a courtyard watching, going bananas for Game 5 or even one of the home games, and it's weather related. So if you go back to like 2003-4, the Stanley Cups that have won, it's the Sun Belt states that have had so much success. So it's, what was it, 04 was Carolina? What was 05?
Tampa.
Maybe Tampa was 04, 05. I think Carolina might have been 06.
Yeah,
Ducks are
yeah,
07. Kings are 10 and 12. You had Tampa three-peat. And you mix in Chicago, Pittsburgh, but what you don't really get a lot of, and even the teams that make it to the finals, like look at Dallas rolling right now. There's an effect that the season is longer the more north you get in hockey.
Like Winnipeg.
Yes, it gets harder. And
Toronto.
mentally, who seemed fresher in this series, Dallas or Minnesota?
So it's like seasonal affect disorder
Yes.
is related to the playoffs. This is great.
I think that there's a correlation. Look at the Stanley Cups. Look at the teams that win these different things. Like it's unbelievable. The further south you go, the more success there is. And it doesn't make sense because those aren't hockey markets either. But at the same time, like, okay, let's go to and I'm not making excuses. I'm looking for reasons. Let's go back to Game 5. Wild lose. Dallas gets to stay home. Full day at home in Dallas. Wild stay overnight, stuck on the tarmac for an hour, get home 4 o'clock. I sleep in my car that day.
Yeah, I'm aware.
Yeah. I wasn't even playing. I'm not tired.
Yeah, and you fell asleep. And that's
Dallas gets
I
a
think that
recharge
might-
at home in the sun, 65 degrees, like no stress. Minnesota comes home, it's rain, it's cold, it's different. Like all spring, not a good day. There's this and that. I'm not looking for excuses, but I do think the length of winter and the lack of, let's just call it vitamin D over time, wears some of these guys down. I played in California. It was unbelievable because you have a bad day, you go to the beach, and literally the waves wash the poop off of you.
And I think the biggest losers in the entire world are maybe the British. And they're like, they have no hope. Yeah, that makes sense.
Colorado, like
Well, Colorado.
it's not
won last year.
it's not everywhere, but what's had the most success the furthest south or the furthest north? Chicago,
Yep.
and
It would be great to look at the weather patterns those years.
the average
when they
tempo
won
of
it,
those
but,
ones.
Man, this is we're really in some interesting territory here.
I'm looking for reasons.
So
I'm looking for reasons.
there is it's been a hard winter and there's been no sunlight, and it's funny today that it's sunny. Driving in here I thought to myself, God damn it, we could be playing I can't say that. That's like the worst swear word, right? Sorry everyone. But like I'm like
We could tell why you weren't nervous on
I'm
Sunday.
like we could be playing Seattle and Boston's out. I mean, it's just a complete
Yeah.
wild world, And then I go into Minnesota, thought like, well, maybe Dallas will win the cup, and then we were like really close to winning the cup or something. Eriksson Ek didn't play, blah blah blah. But I think that's why I want it so bad, because I really think Minnesotans are like losing inches on their height, like it's not good. And I was in the office today, and one of the young people that work with us was like, well, the Lynx, and I was like, you know what? If the Lynx were making a run right now, I'm going to Target Center because I want to get some winning on me. Like when that was happening, I missed it. Like I wasn't doing WNBA, I missed it. I know it gets talked about sometimes, but I want some winning on me. I want to have some momentum. I want to know what it feels like, and that's why I don't necessarily fault the fan base. I know what you're saying. It's like we're coaches,
and I'm not blaming them. It's
but
part
we're
of
coaches.
it. If you're part of it, you're part of it.
Yeah, but they just don't. We don't know. Like we're kind of like sitting there going like, well, maybe this will turn out good. It's like we're watching a movie and the finish is already done. Where you're saying, no, man, this is a living, breathing thing. You can change the outcome.
Right.
And I do believe that. That's why we do this. But when you're in the game, I totally have an element of like, let's see what we're dealing with here. And I usually let the team show me the first move and then respond, besides the first 5 minutes of screaming and all that. But yeah, there's definitely a lull where it's like, oh no, it's happening again. Yeah, that runs through your brain.
That's reactive versus proactive. But again, yeah, like from the fans' perspective, I literally just think about it this way: like it's the same coaching adage that you ever had. You point a finger, you've got three pointing back at you. Like for as much as somebody else can do better, you can fix a couple things as well to make the whole situation.
Do you want to go all the way to the darkness? Do we want to bring in?
I think, yeah.
Okay, so this for the listeners. I think sometimes when you listen to this, you're like, well, this podcast is affiliated with the Wild in some way. You know, will these guys really go all the way? Do they really bleed like I bleed? You know, So I've had a gentleman blowing up my phone for the playoffs, and I can't even read most of the text he said because they are so dark that it would be troubling. And I hope he isn't quite as dark on the phone here, but I think just to show,
let's get it dark. Let's open it up.
So this guy's name is
Gotta hit the bottom.
Is Big K. That's
Is
what
he
we're going to
actually
refer
big?
him. He's not very big,
Okay,
but I don't know why we call him Big K. But he's got some theories, and I think we owe it to ourselves to kind of, if he even lets us get a word in edgewise here. It'll be great if he doesn't answer.
Yep.
All right. So we're bringing you in, but you got to kind of follow the rules here. Are you ready?
Yeah, I figured you put me on a chain here.
No, you're not on a chain. You're not on a chain. But I want to. It's hard to have a conversation with multiple people where I'm holding a phone into a microphone, like a very high technology podcast. But so I'm going to run a couple of your theories through. I'm going to give you the platform that you would like, so that people don't think we're a bunch of gumdrop eating rubes on this podcast. But one of the theories you proposed to me numerous times on the thread, Big K, was, dude, you got to get out of this Minnesota sports fan thing. You know, if you can't beat them, join them. You lived in New York for 4 years. You know, the Rangers and the Devils are playing tonight. Pick one and never look back. Life's too short for this type of misery. Let's break out of Shawshank and run until the dogs can't find us. Take us through this theory. Is this something you believe, that it's time to just cut the cord as Minnesota sports fans? You have the floor.
Do you want me to say what your response was?
No, not really.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure. What did I say? What did I say?
Hey, listen. All right, I'll say this. I mean, I
don't
lived
know what I said.
in Chicago for their 3 cups. Like and in a weird way, I think that's the best and worst part of fandom. Like I remember the first one. It was really cool. The second one, I was like, oh, sweet. Like, you kind of expected it. The third one was that Boston series where it came from behind, I think in game 6. It was on the road. Everyone was in Wrigley. So we were going to go down there for the overtime. And then I think it was Bickle that scored maybe 2 goals in that last 30 seconds. So, and I remember hearing out the window people launching fireworks, and you could hear Wrigley from my girlfriend's place at the time, and these weren't like sparklers out the window either. These were like mortars, like illegal Wisconsin fireworks that I wouldn't recommend anybody holds, particularly out of a window. But it was nutty, and and I bring that up because it's like the best thing in the world, and when you've got it once, you can't get enough of it. I remember in Chicago, that was kind of the thing. Like, the first one was amazing. The second one was like, oh yeah, we expect this. The third one was like, damn it, we couldn't get down there quick enough. But I bring all that up because one of the things I looked at Reddit, which is a tough place to be on the internet, especially when it comes to Minnesota sports, and the most depressing thread of all. And there's a lot of them on there, but it was, does anyone remember what it was like to win in Minnesota? And it was like this. It was like putting a cassette tape in of your grandfather's greatest hit stories. And the saddest thing I remember hearing was, like, you've got people that remember living where they were living. Somebody said that they were 2 miles away and they could hear the parade. Everyone was happy and excited. There's nothing like the joy of winning, but this has been too long.
So you think rip off the Band-Aid and just
rip off the Band-Aid and taste a little win.
Carts, you got to ask.
You have to go elsewhere. So you have to go elsewhere to taste that.
I mean, Carts, my brother had a great quote. He said, I've got a new idea for the podcast. You could call it the 7th Street with 7 first-round bounces. You heard it from Thomas Jancic first.
Well, but what about this? So when I do need to hear what I responded to you at some point. I hope it's not too bad. But my theory has always been, the last thing I want to do is leave, and then when they finally win, I'm not there because it's going to taste even sweeter. I mean, I think that's why, as a fan, you stick around. Is there something to that or no?
No, there is. It's why you guys managed to suck in. I was thinking you'd maybe video. I have a Wild Stanley Cup playoff puck from 2015 still sitting on my mantle. I jumped all in. I told Carts when you guys had that game where they went reverse retro, the towels were out. I wanted to make a ghillie suit and kind of be like the Green Man group upside down on the penalty, box, kind of an unofficial mascot. I mean, I was like the guy in Righteous Gemstones that walked all the way back into the water with the Mark of the Beast tattoo and the eyeliner. But I think I gotta go back to the dark place.
What, Carts? What do you got? Give him.
Just ask him what went wrong.
What went wrong? Why did we lose this series?
You know what? Well, I will say this. I think I think Carter called it right at the very beginning. Net front presence. You even go back to the Foligno game. I mean, he kind of filled that role after Eck was done. And to lose that piece that early, and you've got a goalie that Ottinger's, I mean, we know he's from this state. Like, he's awesome. We saw it last year. When you get somebody locked into the zone like that, you can't. The only way to really get them out is to start rattling the cage. And we didn't have anybody to do it. And Carter, you called that from the very beginning that was going to be an issue. And I think it just progressed. We had a couple of bad bounces that really didn't work our way. Yeah, I mean, people bring up coaching. I don't. The reality is look at the Boston series. Well, you put Swayman in, and Swayman basically is winning it until 20 seconds to go last night. And and you're the hero if it works, and you're not if it doesn't. You look at New Jersey; they made a switch to Schmidt, and I don't love that. You can from the outside looking in, you can go, well, Dean didn't make adjustments. Dean didn't. It's like St. Louis. Yeah, he had a really bad hand of cards and some bad bounces. So I don't want to put it on any of that. I think again, Carter just nailed it in that front presence. We just didn't have any.
Got enough about Carter. So hey, just in closing, your message to the fan base would be: life's too short. Taste some winning. Run.
Move to see it.
I mean, well, I think your point about, I would say this. Your point about we're here to change the vibe. You don't know how to change the vibe until you expect to win. Like I said, when I was in Chicago, it becomes, you go to the bar and you almost expect to it's like these 3 months are going to be hell. I think you said a few weeks ago, you're like, Carter, how did you do this as a player? I mean, it's grueling as a fan but once you do it, you kind of start to expect it. Listen, I would love nothing more in my entire lifetime to see one wild parade. But I'm looking at my dad. He's getting older. He goes up to Red Lake. He fishes. He's never seen the Vikes do anything. I mean,
so you don't want to be your father.
I just feel bad for people. Like win a little bit and then just.
We got to end this. Hey, what did I reply when you said move to New York? You have to be honest though, because I'm going to check it afterwards. When I was like, just join me. And
you told the story. That night was your birthday.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
You were a man of few words, but you were in a very
it was vulnerable,
honest position. And I think your only response was when I said, "Hey, you lived in New York, jump back on," and I think your only response was considering.
Oh no. Well, hey, thanks for checking in with us, Big K. We'll process this and I don't know, keep the faith. That's what we're trying to do here. And your dad's welcome on the pod anytime, or worst case, we'll all go up to your lake. Thanks, buddy.
Well, I love you guys. Love what you're doing. I keep watching it. It's just
you're just not sure it's good for
man.
you.
It's just not helping.
Hey, by the way, just to be fair, your best text to me was, and you guys are part of the problem. Quit making us hope.
I a doctor on to talk about the public health risks of ulcers and high blood pressure from this.
All right, bye.
I love you.
I mean, my God. I look at my dad. The best part of that was I look at my dad. He hasn't seen anything with the Vikings. We go up to the lake. He's making a health decision, right? I mean, that's a mental health decision.
Who's his team now? That was going to be my next question.
I would guess Edmonton. Just to close this section, and we'll get Burnside on here, but this was a great one. It's related. So one of my, I think group texts are the greatest thing in the world. I'm assuming you have a bunch of group texts. And so this one, it's only 3 of us. And 2 of us have the hockey bug. The other ones are Twins, Vikings, or whatever. And the guy says he's not a Wild fan, the one guy. He says, I think this is why I'm unable to dive into the Wild. It's not their fault. It's just I already have too many Minnesota sports teams in my emotional portfolio, which have all been bad investments. It's like, why buy a third piece of real estate in a neighborhood I keep losing money in? The Vikes and Twins are all I can manage without going emotionally bankrupt.
Don't cut your flowers and water your weeds. Is that what he's saying?
Oh boy, we got to somehow get back to sea level after that call, but I think the listeners, we're trying to provide some closure here on the 22-23 season. And
we'll bring in Burnside next. But the other thing that stood out to me is because this is, again, like every Minnesota person is like, of course, it's a Minnesota kid. We can't have him, but all of a sudden there's a good goaltender from here. He's on the other team, rattled about
it's
that.
Always the Minnesota. Like, we're washing Brock Faber's feet with our hair right now. I mean, and he played great. Don't get me wrong, but it's like we almost would be better off. That's all we see is the one of us, right? Ottinger.
No, it's Inger.
Okay, whatever. Should we get a professional on here? First, a word from our sponsors. It's playoff time, and that means it's playoff beard time. And nobody has your beard sorted better than the folks at Duke Cannon. Whether you want beard balm, beard oil, beard wash, they have it all. Check out dukecannon.com. Use promo code BEARD10 for 10% off. Don't leave this stuff to people who don't know what they're doing. Trust the experts at Duke Cannon. Get that playoff beard rocking.
Well, everybody, it's back. The Aquarius Home Services and Connecticut Customer Appreciation Open House event is happening Friday, May 5th through Sunday, May 7th. Connecticut water treatment systems will be up to 30% off. Salt and water filters are 20% off. New heating and cooling systems up to 25% off. Food and fun for all. And be sure you bring in your water sample for a free water analysis. It's the Aquarius Connecticut Open House event, May 5th through the 7th in Little, Canada at 694 and 35E. Details at aquariushomeservices.com.
All right, now that we've left the dark hole where Big K lives, although he did provide some wisdom, if it's not grabbing that last nacho, you only change the vibe when you expect to win. I think that was some wisdom from Big K. We're going to get some more wisdom from the editorialist, IST, everybody smart, rocket scientist. They're all ists, and we have one here, Mr. Scott Burnside, who, I don't know, what's your take on all this? I mean, you're new to Minnesota. How messed up are we?
Yeah, no, it's here's what I took from watching the players in the locker room after Game 6, and then today in the exit interviews and the media briefing, is that they understand so keenly what it means to this community and how lousy it feels to not get the job done, right? Like, and I think every team, yes, they feel bad when they lose and they're sad that they aren't playing anymore, but I think it's more pronounced here because the history makes it so. And so, you know, I think that, you know, the question is, well, what's your, as a team, as an organization, as a fan base, I mean, the patience is one thing, but it's asking a lot of a fan base to consistently be good enough to make the playoffs, which this team is. And I think even with the cap issues that they're in the middle of right now and will have to face for the next couple of years in a big way, they're still a playoff team. Yeah. I love the core of this team, and I think there are reasons that they did not beat Dallas, even though I think they were good enough to win that series. Right. Like this wasn't a blowout, right? This was a bunch of stuff. It's a bunch of stuff that happened, and maybe it goes back to what you're just talking about. Do you believe that you're ready to win? And I'm not sure that I'm not sure. You know what we've seen here. There were a bunch of things that happened that Dallas took advantage of, and the Wild couldn't counter. They could not. They had no answer for them.
Individually, when do you perform your best? When you think somebody believes in what you're capable and able to do, or when somebody's doubting you, telling you that you're not worthy all of the time?
Completely the former.
Right, exactly.
I saw it with Boldy with the 7 sheets. He went on a tear. I saw it with Matthew Tkachuk last night.
Right.
This guy, he is so in his element when the stakes get higher. I mean, he's got no pulse. He's being interviewed before the game. Even when they scored the winning goal, he's standing in the crease watching it go in. And it's like he knows it's going to go in. The goalie can't see anything.
How about the quote where it was like, remember this locker room? We'll be here for 7.
We'll be back here for Game 7. And the 2 greatest words in the English language, Game 7, he said that as well. But, yeah, that's a guy, oh, my God, does he have the last nacho. And he probably took one out of your hand, too.
So I want to, yeah, exactly. Like, I actually went to reach for it, and he raced me for it. But right? He's like, I'm not going to concede.
To go back to what you said, it's interesting as a fan. So I didn't see all of the locker clean-out stuff today, and I want to hear about that from you guys. But I saw a brief clip of Hartman online talking. He was just looking down, and he was like, this community deserves better. This is
I mean, we can talk about it all we want. We can say all the right things and make ourselves look good to you guys and the fans by saying, oh, we got to do this and that. But none of that really matters. You just got to go do it. You can't just talk about it all the time. I think that's been a big thing. Everyone says the right things. Makes it sound great, but it really doesn't matter. You got to go get it done and do it when it matters.
And I was like, I remember seeing that, like, yeah, man, like that guy, he knows.
And he was a playoff gamer.
And he was. He's on my list of playoff guys. But he had that quote was like, he knows that it's been bad. And it's factored into, it's no different than Toronto has this pressure, and when it pops, it goes crazy. But like, I could tell by the way he was speaking that he knew it was different here. It wasn't just like we just lost a playoff series.
So a couple of things. I want to compound on my earlier thought about the Sun Belt states and their success, right? And the fact that there's a little bit more vitamin D. They're also non-traditional hockey markets. So there isn't pressure to win there like there is in Minnesota, in Canada, in some of these other markets. The pressure just doesn't exist. And you could go, all you have to do is sign up for like the newsletter or like the daily clippings from the NHL, and you'll see like all the northern markets have 15 articles to read. You go to the southern markets, they might not have one. Like Carolina might not have an article going into game 1 of round 2. They legitimately might not. There's not much, there's just not pressure there for it. Second thing I want to talk about is who is the guy in the locker room that has the most Stanley Cups or the most experience winning? It would be Marc-Andre Fleury. And for those of you that don't consume these exit interviews, he was asked one of his first questions. It was, hey, what do you think is going to help get this team over the hump? And his answer was simple.
You've been around for these first-round X6, first one on the other side with Vegas, but for this core now, what will it take just to get over that hurdle, do you think?
Yeah.
Having kind of a mental block?
Stop talking about it, maybe. I don't know. I feel like even if you go by first round, I don't think it's not enough anyway, right? Like I think we shouldn't be so stuck in that first round. I think the goal is always to win the playoffs, win the cup. And obviously, your chances are low when you're out in the first round, but. Yeah, I don't know. I think I like this team's been making the playoffs a lot, right, in the past I don't know how many years, but they always battle to get in, and but still at first round I think it shouldn't be a concern, a priority, or the cup is. I think we should just don't even worry or fear in that first round, right, and just move on and try to get going further than that.
There's no hump.
Maybe when we stop talking about it. That was his quote.
Yeah.
Once we stop talking about it and start making that hump bigger than it actually is, maybe that's the moment that they're able to get over it. But the more you talk about it, the bigger that hurdle becomes all of a sudden because of the pressure. And I'll lay down now, but those are just my thoughts on that again.
Yeah. No, and I thought Mark was really interesting again today because, legitimate questions about what will happen next season. He's got one more year left on his deal. He, has talked openly that maybe his final season. He's going to become the second all-time winningest goaltender fairly early next season. He's going to pass Patrick Roy. But he said something I thought, it's about what you guys are talking about, but how when you win a championship, all you want to do is win another one. Like I think there's this notion that, that once you this, but when you win a championship, there is, of course, great satisfaction. But I do think that it's interesting that is a consistent thing of the players I've talked to, coaches over the years, that there's never enough.
Yeah.
And that's
it's like
it's a drug or whatever it is.
It's like Girl Scout cookies. You can't just have one.
Right, exactly. And I think I think it's okay to talk about that. And the other thing, stop talking about just winning a round, because that's not the goal. The goal is not to win a round, even though I think for some, it's become such a big thing here that's the step you got to get over. It's like the Leafs not getting out of the first round since 2004. They might win a cup, but I think for a lot of fans, it was like, can we win a round? And I think Marc-Andre Fleury's point is that should never be
Yeah.
in the locker room
Right.
what we're about.
Right.
So,
But everything changes for Toronto now that they've won that round.
sure.
Next year's playoffs are different
Well,
next
expectation.
round
the
is
bar's been
different.
risen.
because they've seen a promise come true. They've seen, they've got a ring on their finger. It's completely different. All that pressure that's been building for 18 years is gone, and we have a different pressure because we're like the state of hockey, and we haven't won a Stanley Cup. It's super embarrassing. I mean, it's
It is.
super embarrassing. We don't talk
Wait,
about
do,
it enough.
Do you think it's embarrassing?
I do.
I never think that.
Oh my
I
God!
never think that.
That's
I
like-
think
It's
I think
everybody's
un-
chirp back. You Minnesotans say this is the state of hockey, and then the response is always, "How many cups have you won?" It's
I
like,
mean, it's like having it's like we're the royal family, but we don't have a crown. I mean, it's super weird. And it's troubling. But I think once you break through, it's like all of that emotional baggage kind of goes away, And for whatever reason, right now for the Wild, it's this first round exit. It's so I think that would have been a snowball effect had we won the first round. I think then it's like you got a bunch of nacho eating savages biting on the plexiglass at Excel. I think it would have been cumulative.
what do you think happens in Toronto now? Because again, it's about. I do think that expectation matters and how you set it. So if the expectation was to get out of the first round, I mean, at some point, like now, the fans are just happy with that. So a second round exit is okay, right? The expectation has to change. So point being, if you're a Wild fan and your expectation is quite simply that, can we just win a round? You're already conceding that you probably don't have the team that you believe will win. Without belief in that, you're never going to win. And then at the same time, once you get into that more pressure-packed situation, you're not going to handle it appropriately. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden you're in the second round, you're like, okay, I don't know how to handle this. When the expectation is to get through it, I think it makes it a little easier to get through it. But yeah, I want to get into now the hockey stuff and what actually went wrong. We had our bold predictions. I'll start.
Hey,
And I do-
Huss, you have to score these. This is our producer, Huss, because it's not fair unless you score them. So you can award a full point or a half point based on the prediction, okay?
So I'll go first, and let's actually preface it. These are the bold predictions that the Wild will have to have in order to win,
That's
or
what
that
it was.
Yeah.
that they'll have to have?
To win this round.
Yeah. So my first one was Robertson will have 3 points. And I think that was true. And had they stayed out of the penalty box, they could have gotten that one. He had one 5-on-5 point. I think it was game 6.
was.
But
So you're getting credit for that because
I'm not getting credit. Huss has
he got
to.
100
But
power play
Robertson
points.
has 3 points. Yeah, what did he end the series with? 10 points?
it wasn't good.
I don't think he had 10, but it was a
He had
lot.
6 before game 6.
Yeah, he had 6. He had 2, 4, 6, and then it was maybe 7 or 8. PP 25%.
No, 19%, right?
Yeah. 14 forwards play. Nailed that one. Fleury wins final game. I would have been on that one. No chance Fleury doesn't go game 7. Wild win 6. X scores series winning goal. Again, that would have needed to happen.
Okay, so we're just throwing these away because
Well,
we're,
that's what-
we're doing
none
a
of them
crystal
happened.
ball.
None of them happened.
Okay, what did you? Let's just hear some of the worst ones.
Eriksson plays, and he helps to shut down Robertson. So I got 19 seconds.
Yeah,
out of that
19
one.
seconds.
And I mean, how great! Like I know we romanticize the hockey player mentality, but it's a broken leg. He had played for 19 seconds and then had to have surgery. It's pretty incredible.
Beast mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had Gustafsson outduels Ottinger, gets 2 shutouts. And I thought Philip Gustafsson was very candid today as well. And he said, listen, I thought I played well in game 1, but was only average after that. And I think that's a fair. I think he's pretty self-aware, and I think that's probably fair. And I mean, Ottinger was the best player for either team by a wide margin.
You're just trying to distract from this next one.
I said the Wild will allow 4 or fewer power play goals.
That's what it needed to have. They needed to have that.
They scored 2 in about 5 minutes in game 1 in the first period. So yeah, and I was pretty good on John Klingberg though, that he would have 2 power play goals and at least 4 points. I think he ended up with 4 points.
I think so too. Yeah. He had, both his games were multi-point games.
How's your 5th one?
This is a really good one. Matt Boldy will lead all players in scoring in the series. He did not score a goal and had 3 assists. And again, I give, I like it, and you mentioned this, Ryan, but players are owning this. There were a lot of injuries. Ryan Hartman's got a knee injury. Sounds like surgery isn't going to be needed, or he hopes it's not going to be needed, but obviously affected his skating. And I felt as the series went along, it was hard for him. Obviously, no Eriksson Ek, Dumbaz can't play in the third period. All those things. So, but Matt Boldy really owned it, I thought, today, and said, I was not very good, and I expect way more of myself, and I felt I let my teammates down. I'm paraphrasing. And I think that's a really important thing for a young player to come to grips with and to share in that public forum, because, it was a difficult series for him. And I felt that he and I we spoke before the playoffs started, and he talked about how much he felt he'd learned a year ago. And he said today, I wasn't good enough, or I didn't learn enough, or
And he didn't make excuses, but again, now the challenge would be to find the reasons. There are reasons that he didn't play well enough, and he probably won't admit to some of them because he doesn't want to make it seem like it's excuses. But there are reasons, whether it's 82 games, preparation, body wasn't right, mentally wasn't in a good spot. Different scenarios. There's reasons why he didn't. And that will be his job and all their jobs over the summer is to figure out those reasons and appropriately try to fix them. That's why you learn more during losses than you do during wins.
Yeah.
Well, this exercise is kind of goofy because we didn't win the first round, so I don't know exactly how we do this. But I had Moose Crossing. I thought Foligno would be an impact player for us to win. He was all over this series, but we didn't win. I thought we were going to play a chaotic Fauda-style game. There would be over 50 penalty minutes. I think that's true that happened. We didn't win. Blackjack 21, Duhaime, thought he was going to be involved. That didn't happen. Boldy and Kirill thought they were going to be Batman and Robin. That did not happen. D-scoring, I don't actually know how much our defense scored. I think
Not
we
much.
did. No? By ratio? The
Klingberg
team didn't score that much. I don't know. Our D might have been... Yeah, so I did terrible as well.
Well, let's go. Let's each pick one and say the reason that we think why that is. For me, it's obviously Robertson has 3 points. They needed to keep him to that. Robertson, to me, at times, watching him play, it didn't look like a playoff hockey player. Like he didn't have the Matthew Tkachuk, right? And unfortunately, the Wild, I think, gave him platform by taking too many penalties, making it easy on him. Imagine how hard that narrative is for him. He would be in the situation where he's absolutely getting roasted in Dallas, but the power play bought him time. Like he was not good enough. The Wild allowed him to be good enough.
He's
on
without
the
his
power
center.
play.
Pavelski's out.
So that's for me, that's a big reason, and that falls entirely on the penalty kill. And if we wanted to chase that one, I thought the penalty kill mentally as a group seemed fragile.
Yeah.
They seemed to not have the memory that you were talking about where you just have to forget. The way it all started did not go well for them, and it's here we go again, pressure mounted, and they couldn't handle it. Now excuses and reasons are different things too. I get it. They were down very critical people. They couldn't win a faceoff at the appropriate times. There's also a difference between a guy that makes $6 million and a guy that makes $1 million in terms of their resolve. There's a difference. There's a reason that guy has a bigger contract and makes more money, and it's because he performs in tighter situations. You rely on him more when it matters most, and being without some of those guys hurt the Wild penalty kill, but mentally as a group, I think a little bit fragile, and it ended up costing them.
Yeah. Well, and that I would just to piggyback on that, the whole thing with Eriksson Ek and his evolution as a player is so, if you take Tkachuk out of that Florida lineup, Do they beat Boston? No.
No way.
I say zero chance that happens. And I'm not comparing them stylistically, but everything flows from him. And it's not an excuse, but the reasons that, how many times in that series did Dallas win a draw on the power play and score? There were at least 3, maybe 4, where they scored inside of 20 seconds on a power play. And the Wild didn't have the puck. And when you don't have your top face-off guy, you chase, you have to retrieve the puck. I think it's one of the big reasons that the power play wasn't as effective as it needed to be, is that you spent more time retrieving pucks because you didn't often have possession off the draw. And so now you're balanced down the middle. I thought Freddie Gaudreau had a really nice series. He's a good player, but he's better as your 3 center, right? He's the 3C. He's the perfect 3C.
Right.
So you have people being asked to do things, again, to your point on the salary part of it, but that Eriksson Ek thing is so critical. And everything, the issues on the special teams flow through him. Puck possession, confidence, all those kinds of things. So to me, that's the big thing. It's a mugs game, but if Eriksson Ek is healthy and he plays, I think Minnesota wins that series.
Damn you, Malkin. We should boo him every time he handles the puck next time he plays in Minnesota. Mine, I guess, the Moose one, just to make myself look marginally be better on this list of 5, I think most of the penalties called against him weren't penalties. The league has said as much.
That's bogus too, in my
It's the
opinion.
worst. I don't even
What is
want
the
to know
league
that.
doing?
Just swallow the chew spit. Don't tell us that. I don't want to know that you made a mistake. It makes it so much worse. I
That
agree.
doesn't make sense to me.
But he didn't change how he played. After kind of a offensive year where he kind of dipped back down, he was all over this series. It's unfortunate that it ended up being a bunch of sort of penalty situations, but
The Wild, and I said this in one of the earlier podcasts, but I really truly believe that this postseason will be trailblazers, in that a physical brand of hockey is still legal. It's not illegal to finish your hit on Hakanpää. He got hit for it. He was penalized for it. And now there will be memos in the offseason that will say, like, hey, these guys are right. If he didn't hit him in the head, that's not a penalty. If he's not along the boards, if he touches the puck, there is a 1/1000 count where he can be finished. And Marcus got penalized for those. And the hard part is, and I think Dean was right in doubling down on at times about saying this is who we are. We're physical. We play this way. At the same time, like, it's unfortunate, I think, for Marcus, because Marcus is a fan favorite, great dude too. I don't think he played Game 6 like he played Games 1 through 5. I think he changed a little bit. And that is a tough spot for a league to put a player into where, hey, this is my last window with maybe Matt Dumba, if you heard any of his comments today. 2 guys that are good buddies, 2 assistant captains, to have to own the fact that he was in the box for 3 straight power play goals against. 2 goals that maybe, and it's not his fault because they weren't penalties, but cost his team the game, and then goes out, plays 1 shift, gets a 5-minute major, team scores on that 5-minute major. Again, not his fault, but you can't help but feel that way, I think, as a player. It's unfortunate, but I do think that the Wild will end up being trailblazers, and you'll see like a little bit of an old school mentality come back. Referees are used to the new school way where it's stick checks and pats on the backs and smiles on the face-offs. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden there's a little bit of hate, and I don't think that they knew how to respond to it.
And what's interesting is if you look at this Boston series, which will be talked about at length, so they were killing it on the power play. It was almost similar to the Dallas situation. So, and you got Florida just being disturbers, right? If Tkachuk starts the first shift, they typically go right up to the goalie. They're in his business. The goalie tries to fight Tkachuk. I mean, they have that, that structure of they've got the center, they've got Tkachuk. They've got the big D man, Ekblad, who's almost like a different version of Hedman. But they played physical, disruptive, ratty hockey, and they beat a Boston team that was on paper the best regular season team in history that was killing it on their power play, and they just knocked them out because the playoff style of hockey in that series, I believe, won the day.
Yeah, but Bobrovsky comes in that series in Game 5. Well, yeah, did he come in Game 5? Anyway, he plays in Game 5. They're totally outplayed. They end up winning in overtime because Bobrovsky is unbelievable. And I thought Gustafsson was like that in
Game 1.
Game 1 after the second power play goal, where there was just a calmness about him that was the high point. And unfortunately, Ottinger was like that
the rest of the series.
Well, not after game 4, he was, in those moments that, he really elevated his game and gave the Stars a chance to win when probably the Wild, if they get a bounce, if, Foligno scores on that breakaway, I mean, think about those breakaways, right? If one of those.
So many. Carell breakaway, Sam Steele breakaway, Nyquist misses the pass. I mean, there's like, a half a dozen.
Again, that's what makes it hurt more is that the Wild had their chances to eliminate the penalty narrative. And that's if they scored on some of these.
Yeah.
And
Sam Steele scores. Marcus Foligno does not get the major.
Right.
Because it's on the same sequence.
Ryan Hartman scores.
Yeah.
Rupe Hintz doesn't score on the first shot.
Exactly. If Marcus Foligno scores on either of the two glorious chances, the breakaway and then the rebound, then you go up 3-1, right? So it just, again, I think it's hurtful, but it's also, should there be some optimism then? Because you're looking at a series and you're breaking down in 4 or 5 yin and yang type plays, but they're like this is a good hockey team.
Yeah, that's the challenge for Bill Guerin and Dean Evison now is to like needle the guys enough to where they're uncomfortable and they go have a good couple months being ready to play, but at the same time patting them on the back and saying what was accomplished was pretty impressive, and it was that close. I mean, you short $12 million or whatever it is to go out there and compete with that. Take $12 million off of Dallas's roster right now.
Yeah.
Take Tyler Sagan off. He makes like $12 million. Just take that dude alone out of the equation. That's a much different hockey club. Well, if you want to go a different route, you can take Heiskanen, and then you can take Dodonov or Max Domi, or take $12 million off that roster, or add $12 million. Add those guys to the Wild roster the way it looks, and that's the bed that's made for them. But it is pretty remarkable when you look at it, how they were able to perform, what they were able to do with what they had, and they had Dallas on their heels. And I guess that's the segue now to the coaching one and I think Pete DeBoer did a great job, and he's catching some heat, I think, in the media a little bit, but I don't necessarily think that Dean was outcoached or outfoxed in that regard either. You've got 2 goaltenders. I've said this though forever. I hate 2 goaltenders for that exact reason. Look at Boston. Look what Boston had to do. Like, who wants to do that? Nobody. You've got Allmark, who has a great year. They tried to pick one guy, and he didn't play great. In the end, you have to play Swayman cold in 7. Like, I don't know that they had a choice with 2 goaltenders.
Yeah, and I don't know what I saw something that Allmark may have had in battling an injury or something like that. But yeah, no, it's a hard thing, and I thought Dean, he owned the goaltending change in Game 2, which, again, a Muggs game. If Gustafsson starts Game 2, is it any different? I don't know if you have an answer. To me, what's interesting about this team, though, is that we talk about some of these, these pieces, and they're still, like, Boldy's a kid still. Even Kaprizov, who seems like he's been around a long time now, he's still a kid. And,
Actually, Eck is still a kid. He's, 26?
Yeah. And Faber, I thought, was excellent, and what a nice piece he's going to be.
Yeah.
The core here.
There's some good bones.
Good bones, and they're going to learn from this. And I'll be shocked. Let's do this next year. We'll do this. I'll come here and we'll do this thing. Keep sandpaper, get some new Sharpies.
I have some more pages I was planning on a deeper
would
run.
do that. But
I got a couple W's in my notebook.
I'm
too.
gonna
Should we
keep-
just leave them there? Should we just leave the 2 W's up on the wall?
I don't know.
Maybe the fans will be stoked because when we get 2 wins next year, we'll finally win around. We'll have 4 W's up there.
How far away is the super Swede goalie? You know, because some of these goalies that come into the league, it's a little tricky because you saw what happened with Spencer Knight, and I don't even know where he is right now. But then you've got Igor, and you've got Vasilevsky, and you've got these like blue chip goalie prospects that seem like they can change a franchise. And as I
Ottinger.
understand it, that's what exactly. As I understand it, that's what we have in Iowa. Is that years away? I mean, because other people say you can't mess with a goalie until they're 25.
Yeah, I think you overbake a goalie. Absolutely
Just let 'em
overbake
just
a goalie.
marinate, crock pot.
Yeah. You don't pull him out even medium well.
So he's sitting until the cap problems.
I
are
don't know
over.
when that is. I'm not in the business of evaluating like potential talent. But yeah.
But don't you, I mean, you got to feel pretty good about your goaltending for next year anyway, right? I mean, I know that Gustafsson needs a deal, but
And one more year turns that into where it was 1A, 1B this year. The narrative changes.
Yeah.
It's 1 and 2 maybe.
yeah. And, again, I don't think it's any secret, and Bill Guerin has talked about this. Gustafsson wasn't in great shape when he got here. There was a conditioning issue. He's being asked to go home to Sweden, work on the conditioning, and with the idea, as he said today, so that I can play more games. And I think that's a good thing. And you know what? I think it's a good tandem. Fleury's a great teammate. 1 more year, and then maybe you see, okay, so where is that then? Is it Gustafsson and I can't remember the kid's
Wallstead.
Wallstead, yeah. I was here for the draft though when they picked him, and people were very excited.
Jesper.
Yeah, so maybe that's the appropriate bakage.
And I think it's important to be honest too about what transpired during the series. Like you have to win certain elements of a series to win the series. So if you go from goaltenders out, who won the series?
Dallas.
Special teams, let's just go
Dallas.
power play, who wins it? Penalty kill, who wins it?
Dallas.
Yeah, face-offs, who wins it?
Dallas.
Physicality, who wins it?
Wild.
Yes. 5-on-5 offense, actually, who wins this one?
Draw.
I think it ended up being a draw,
I think so.
Yeah, they scored
but pretty close
It's
there.
a little overplayed. We were better on 5-on-5. We were just as good 5-on-5.
How about off-ice narrative? Who wins that one?
Dallas.
Yep. So Dallas started to win more of these elements that you need to win to take a series. And I
You got
think
to remember that list for next year. We now know how to win. You got to have a better goalie. You got to have better PP, better
face-offs,
PK,
yeah,
face-offs.
shutdown D.
Hey,
You could even go line to line.
can we do our playoff guys? That's a good way to do that. Maybe just guys that.
Let's go playoff guys, and then go. What makes it hurt more is the Dallas Digital, and then we'll get out of here.
Oh God, rubbing salt in our wounds. Go Seattle.
Before we get to this, let's
Do a break from our beloved sponsors.
yeah.
The Wild on 7th pod is sponsored by Gem Sleep. Even Ryan Carter's mother is solving her sleep apnea. We got these late starts for the playoff games. We can't have Dana Carter walking around like a walking zombie, low energy, hurting her relationships, bad for her health. No, she took the initiative. Gem Sleep took care of her, almost like an Uber for sleep apnea. Gem Sleep is where sleep apnea goes to get put to bed. And be like Ryan Carter's mother and reach out to mygemsleep.com/wild. Don't be a walking zombie. Take care of yourself this playoff season, just like Mrs. Carter.
All right, everybody. Well, I think with the 80-degree days that just rolled through, we can officially say spring is here, which means it's roofing season. And if you're like me, lived in one of the areas that had the storms roll through with plenty of damage, it can take 18, 24 months for some of that damage to rear its ugly head. Good thing for you, our friends at Wild Construction have a great tool on their website. They've got a 3-year hail history map. They've got inspection write-ups and other things that you can check out. Super easy to use. Just go to their website, input your address, and they'll give you info on good, better, best price options for your roof and the damage that you might have. These guys want to help you out. They're a Minnesota-based company, good quality guys, and hey, man, Wild Construction, they make it happen. Check them out, wildconstructionmn.com.
Well, the Wild are in the second season, the best one. And you know what? It's also slaw season. Do not sleep on the slaw. Get yourself some Jimmy's coleslaw. They have original, pineapple, and fat-free. So you got that paper plate rocking out by the grill. You got that warm burger, a little bit of crunch, and then you add some cool coleslaw texture. It's the best of all worlds happening at your BBQ. Check it out. They're a Minnesota company down from Stewartville, Minnesota, family-owned. Check out Jimmy's salad dressings and dips. Don't sleep on the slaw. Don't you be messing with my dressing.
All right, let's get some of these playoff guys extensions. What are we looking for from some of these guys? Okay.
Well, I just think there's a difference between guys and playoff guys.
So Tkachuk is a playoff guy.
Oh, God. I mean, you could make a cookie cutter out of him.
Is he the modern-day Claude Lemieux?
Yes.
Or Scott Stevens, like playoff guys?
Yeah, he's up there. Franchise changer.
Early, but yeah, okay.
But I'm going to do my list fast so it doesn't take too long. And this doesn't mean that if you're not on the list this year that you're not a playoff guy in the future or whatever.
Prove it to you this year.
It's just like you had 6 games. Nyquist. I mean, he missed one long pass. I mean, the guy scored in almost every game.
You mean the president of Sweden? I'm telling you, I can't not see that every time I look at him now.
I want to smell him, and I want to see his pockets.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to give it to Hartman. He scored a game winner. So if you ever win a game
on one leg,
and he's a friend of the program, Zuki rose from the dead and won a game, and didn't do it with his jelly. It was just peanut butter or whatever he is. So I give him just because we won 2 games and he was instrumental. I thought Dumba was a playoff guy. He put out a glass of warm milk. And Freddie, I got Spurgeon, Brodeen in there just because. And I think that's all I had on my list. Gus, I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, Gus helped win game 1, yeah, but I don't think goaltending is why we lost. But I didn't necessarily think goaltending stole games or helped us win and crossed over into that playoff.
I think I'd have to put Eck on that list too. Just think of the emotional bump. So it's almost like everybody understood what this guy's about, and getting him back as a playoff guy. It was 19 seconds, and it was still the best game the Wild had.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
I hear you on that.
So
I didn't even think of that, but yeah.
Yeah, so Eck would be a playoff guy. Yeah, I mean, I think the list is fair. To me, the podium, the guys that looked most prepared and ready to take advantage of the opportunity were Hartman, probably Nyquist. I think Johansson, believe it or not, I think he really wanted it too. He wasn't just spinning the wheels out there. He was trying. So that might be the podium for me. And I know that's forward heavy, but I tend to look at the game through a forward lens more often than not.
Yeah, I would have had Johansson on there. And again, having spent a lot of time in Washington over the years, I was just really impressed with his presence, right? And he's a very thoughtful person, and I thought I couldn't believe how fast he was, right? Just I don't remember watching him play in Washington and go, oh yeah, he's really fast, and I just thought he was really good. I think I feel bad for John Klingberg. He wanted so much to make an impact.
I think he did.
Yeah, I think he did too. And there's he plays the game a certain way. And was hurt a little bit in Game 6 as well, missed some time, but yeah, really, and he is a guy who does elevate. He is a playoff guy. So
who I mean, you do need your bottom 6 to help out, to understand role, to do certain things too. And I think the penalty situation from the Wild got them behind. That really handcuffs your bottom 6. So, for example, knowing your role is so valuable to a coach. You have a goaltender like Ottinger who's playing on the top of his game, and as a fourth line dude, I understand my role. If there's a loose puck there, I need to go in like a kamikaze and somehow make this dude and everybody else mad at me.
Never happened.
Didn't happen. And again, I don't think that it's not in the makeup of those guys. Perhaps there needs to be more of an understanding of role, and just like certain games. Okay, this one's out of our hands. Now let's start playing for the next one.
Take a good hard shift.
Yes, and see what happens, and that's understanding your role. But I do think that you look across the league right now, you don't see a lot of these things either. So I think the role of some of these guys are changing, and the mentalities of what it takes to win in playoff hockey is changing a little bit too. Again, that goes back to Marcus Foligno and the Wild being trendsetters. Like I think some of these conversations that the coaches have to have with players as they're saying goodbye for the summer is, hey, we really liked what you did this year, but when the rubber meets the road and it's the playoffs, your role changes a little bit, and you need to think long and hard about what that role actually means, And that's not me calling somebody else. I think that these guys were legitimately handcuffed too, because I also know that I am not going to be the one that goes out there, makes an aggressive play, and then I go sit in the box for 5 minutes while that team scores 2 on the power play, and boom. I'm now the story, trying to do that, whatever. You certainly don't want to do that. So it's a fine line, but that's where knowing role matters, because it's like, okay, we're down this game. This one won't matter. Okay, let's go send it, you know?
And a couple things on that. Nobody's telling Matthew Tkachuk to do that.
Right. Nobody's telling him.
So
unless his dad is.
His dad is.
His dad is.
His brother.
Somebody's telling him.
And his mother and his sister. But no one on the staff is telling him that. But the other thing is, I was thinking, when I was at Game 6, I literally had a moment where I thought, I think the fourth line was playing great. I think that was Game 6, and I thought,
they were good.
if Ryan Reeves scores a goal here, we win. It's like 3 goals. Like everything will turn. Like the axis of the earth will turn. Whether it was Duhaime, Reeves, Mason Shaw coming back. It was like if we could have just got one of those unexpected moments to kind of add to the start of this podcast, show me something.
Right.
When you see something that surprises you, it has the opposite effect. Holy crap. Revo just went top shelf. All bets are off, folks. Right. We're winning this game. And you just didn't get that moment ever, probably because they were killing penalties the entire series. Their psyche was probably jacked, some of them anyway. And, it was tough.
Well, okay, and now I'm just curious, your guys' observations on it too. Jamie Benn played this series much differently than I anticipated him playing it entirely. There were times where he was challenged and just skated away. I mean, we saw Pete DeBoer's comments, and it was targeted at the Wild and taking penalties. And I think in some regards he knew, or he felt he knew, and I don't stop me and tell me if you think I'm overthinking this. He's got the ability to say, okay, well, this team is bigger, more physical, and that's their avenue to beating us. If I can change that by saying that they take a lot of penalties and then they stop playing that way, that helps my club. If they double down on it and they take more penalties, that helps my club. So that seemed like for him a win-win in that regard.
Yeah.
And he managed that. And then it looks like going back to Sagan coming out, like his comments the following day where we have the best referees in the world calling our games. I would never question that. To Jamie Benn not responding to anything whatsoever. So against everything that we've seen throughout his body of work, to where it was like, were they trying to do that?
Well, if Jamie Benn turns into Marcus Foligno against Seattle, you're going to know that this guy's holding the conductor tongs, and he is a world-class maestro, because they were all on the same script.
They were.
I found Ben to be unlikable in the series because I always thought he was a Moose-type player.
Right.
And we had this vision of this fight at center ice that never, ever happened, which is hilarious. But, and then he was just like this, I don't know what he was, a great face-off guy, but if he runs around and becomes, if that C is branded into his chest like Yellowstone against Seattle, then they are writing chapters to a Stanley Cup that are, it's great television.
There was one moment that stands out to me, and I think it was Reeves who hit Ben by the bench.
On the boards, and he slid him back like 10 feet. It was awesome.
It was like pinching a wet sunflower seed, and it just went pew all the way out, and Ben wanted out of it so fast. He's like, I'm
that's
out.
when the playoffs
And that's
were
for me
fun.
the moment when it was like,
Yeah,
This
let's
is on
see
purpose.
This. Yeah.
Yeah, this is on purpose. He got out of there as fast as he can on purpose.
And that's where the trailblazing thing was all happening in my mind. I was believing it all. Yeah, I remember that was a great moment.
Let's go. Let's throw salt in the wounds. So Dallas, Dallas, they're social. Tell us what you have there, Kinger.
Well, a lot of tough things. Dallas, for some reason, probably because of the Pavelski injury, felt the need to kick us while we were down. Took the playoff motto, grit first, spray painted it with first round exit.
Grit first round exit.
And put that on their official handle, which generally in the league is frowned upon. Also, post of Jake, the goalie. I won't say his last name because I don't know how to say it. And they had the caption was "the king of Minnesota hockey," which is when you're dealing with the one of us culture that we have. That's personal. And there were some memes going around with Kirill riding on Suter's back that I've been sent like a child. And also there was some uproar about the handshake line, the smirking in the handshake line from Suter.
Yeah, how about Suter sitting down for the press conference in St. Paul after they close out the
hasn't
Wild?
Been on a press conference all year. Is that true?
I don't know.
But anyway,
and then the other
surprising choice.
The other one, I think there maybe was some heat thrown Dallas's way for dropping confetti after winning Game 5.
Okay.
Did you happen to notice that? So then they went out to their bench after winning Game 6 and had like toilet paper confetti falling down while being recorded. So it's just, it hurt.
You know what though? It's going to make it so great when the Wild win the first round next year, and all of this stuff, all that's been stored away, will be foisted on. Maybe it'll be Dallas next year. Maybe it'll be Vegas, whoever it is, St. Louis. You can get and the team can get its revenge through social media and the payback. What is it? Paybacks.
Yeah, I know what they say.
It's a 13 itch.
Oh.
I'm not immune to feeling bad about this. Again, post game, I think I saw it on your notes there that I needed to eat for comfort.
I actually think that's great that you know what's funny about this? I believe when we did the deal on podcast sponsorships, it was like 36 episodes, which ended up being exactly how many episodes it took to get through the first round of the playoffs, which is the worst thing. By the way, next year, Huss, when we sell this package, it's like 52 podcasts, and you can't buy it any other way because
expectation.
Yeah, we're setting the stage that we're playoff guys. But so we go to Herbie's. I have a Manhattan. Carter doesn't like his. I finish his. There's some sort of high noon tequila situation. But driving home, I get a ride from him, which was great. It was kind of like the perfect way for it to end. He's like, "I'll drive you home," because I was getting an Uber on my phone. And he does live like 1 minute away. And on the way home, he goes, "Where's the closest Taco Bell?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's in Maplewood. It's kind of not on." He's like, "It's fine." We go in there. There's like 15 cars in line. What was it at 2 in the morning? Yeah. You went with 2 chicken chalupas, which were heavier. I could tell the difference in the bag. And I went with 2 Doritos Locos. We didn't eat them in the car. We're not trash. I took mine out
with
took
2
hot sauces, ate it standing up at my kitchen island, and straight to bed. And my wife's like, "Did Carter come in and eat the food with you?" I'm like, "No."
Yeah, he did.
He took his. I took mine.
No, I actually ate 2.
We did. Did you eat it in the driveway before you left?
No, I ate it. I actually got hollered at when I got upstairs because I was too loud. My eating was too loud.
Of the chalupas?
Yeah. She could hear the wrappers and me throwing it away, so I got in trouble for being too loud, eating my Taco Bell. But
oh man, I'm just trying.
Sometimes you gotta comfort yourself. I comfort myself with food. Taco Bell, I might not go there again until there's this time next year. It could be 12 straight months, but I was hoping they still had chicken chalupa Baja though. That was my order. They didn't have it, so then I had to make it up.
Can I have one final question for this pod? Because I think we've covered a lot of the fan, like don't dodge it, like walk right up to it. The one other thing that people are saying is the reason we don't get over the hump is because we're always like we're never really bad and we're never really good.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
we never get a great draft pick. We try so hard. all the things you would like about a team, we do. We overachieve. We grind it out. Likable bunch of guys, but then we finish kind of in the middle of the pack, and we don't get far in the playoffs. We don't get draft picks, and we're in this perpetual purgatory. Now we have 2 more years of bad cap problems. You know, there's a couple stud centers coming. Celebrini, Yzerman. There's some real. This year's draft is exquisite with Bedard.
You the Mel Kiper of hockey right now?
No, but we do some USHL stuff. So there's like some legit centers. There's a few years of drafts where there's, you know, generational players, which we're all getting used to saying. But I think I heard today the core is good. There's a lot to believe in here. We were without our MVP. We all agree Eriksson Ek's the MVP of the team. Not necessarily the best player, but the most valuable player. He was gone. So we've got this core group that we think could do even better in the playoffs than they did this year. What do you say to the people that are like, you know, you got to tear it down to the studs. You need people. You need to be strong up the middle. We don't have centers. You know, be bad until it's the last year of Kirill's deal and we're out of cap hell, and add some pieces until then. You'll be better off you really give yourself a shot at that point.
Well, what I would say probably is that one, man, it never like there are times, but when you have a legit star in their prime, do not waste those years.
Yep.
You know, you can't. And look,
This is not my suggestion.
look around. Stanley Cups follow elite, and it can't be generational players if there's one every single draft. That's just the top player of the draft. It has to be one every 10, 15 years. Like it has to be Crosby to McDavid, right? There has to be that much space between them for them to be generational. You could say that the talent pool is changing. A lot more people are talented, but anyways, that's a debate for another day. But when you have legit stars, Stanley Cups follow them. Crosby has cups. Kane has cups. McDavid is going to have cups. You have Kirill Kaprizov. Don't tear it down. That would be such a Minnesota thing to do, right? When you finally get the guy that you've been waiting for to say, let's tear it down. It's like, no. And it is going to be challenging with the cap numbers the next couple of years. But I think it's pretty obvious that everything is going to be built and ready to go and hopefully firing on all cylinders when these cap restraints are off the books. And then it's boom, full speed ahead. But you still chase it. You still try to find these pieces. There might be hard decisions that I do think would have to be made. You have a guy that's like 27 years old right now. You might be able to give him a deal. Those are the dudes that you might have to trade to reload all of a sudden. So then you try to get somebody's quality draft pick for and this is never going to happen, but for like a guy, Eriksson Ek, for example, you might have to say by the time our window's here, this player's a different kind of player with 1 million miles on him. Deal this dude now, get our picks, and then have those picks ready to play X number of years from now. And that's a different way to look at it.
No different than what Billy's doing now. Right?
Yeah, and I don't know what that is, but it's not. You don't throw dudes away, or you do what St. Louis was doing, where they're just giving guys that have experience that were good a second chance. It's Vrana, it's some of these other dudes that were good in other spots. Give them a chance, and we're not rebuilding. It's a different term, but no way. Like if any Wild fan that says we should totally tear it down, they're right. They never get their top prospect, their top pick, which forces you to have to be Boston or Kirill Kaprizov. You have to find the Joe Pavelski, the Kirill Kaprizov, the Jamie Benn, the Pasta, the guys that go later than your first 15 picks that are true studs. And but yeah, my 2 cents on that. Never pass a chance with a stud.
Well, and there's no guarantee that if you do tear it down that you
hit on those picks.
You hit on those.
Yakupov.
Yeah.
You could go on and on. And the first round rate's what? It's probably 50%, and they're not all like top end talent.
Yeah.
They're not. They're NHL serviceable players that come out of the first round. That's what you're hoping. You're hoping in the first 2 rounds that you get an NHLer. If you're in the top 10, there's a different pressure. That's where you have to hit your franchise player.
Yeah.
So that's a great answer, and that's why we do the podcast. You just literally whack-a-mole that argument, and there's a group of people making that argument. What about how Boldy and Kirill did in this series? How troubling is that? Like, there was a lot of DeBoer stuff. The DeBoer is like the Kirill eraser, the comparing the 2 series versus the St. Louis series. Boldy's very young. Maybe players need to go through this. I mean, is that alarming? I mean, Kirill was a stud last year in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, and we know the guy doesn't even have golf clubs, so clearly he's a playoff guy. But is that? Should we be freaked out about that, or is he hurt, or what do we make of that?
Well, he said today he wasn't hurt. He said he felt that the injury coming when it did hurt his flow and the rhythm of
Of him and his game.
Which I think is fair. And I assume he was not covering an injury. So if he was healthy, it was disappointing. And I think for Boldy, it's still a small sample size, right? 2 playoff years for him. And again, he's a really good player. I talked to Bill Guerin about Boldy before the playoffs. He said, honestly, I don't know what his ceiling is. Like, I think that's, and again, when you go back to your question about, tearing it down, oh my God, like, there's a really nice group here. If Gustafsson is the real deal, it's not, it was the second, statistically second behind Linus Ullmark.
Right.
So if he's the real deal, you have a solid blue line. You've got dynamic pieces up front. Yeah, it's that was not a great series for either of those players. But boy, you said this earlier, right? You learn more from losing. So maybe that's the lesson, and maybe that lesson comes to fruition for both those players next year.
And it's not excuses, but let's go back to reasons. And sometimes you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So Dean Evison chose to rest players. And then, so Kirill and Zuki didn't get the peanut butter and jelly smashed together quick enough, and then it didn't translate into playoff hockey. Let's go all the way up to Boston, where they didn't rest their guys. And in one of the last games of the season, Bergeron ggets hurt.
Yep.
Krejci's hurt. They played the first half of the series without their 2 top centermen. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So in this one, Kirill couldn't get up to speed fast enough in his own eyes.
And a lot of new pieces that he really wasn't used to playing with, by the way.
Yeah. So he couldn't get up to speed fast enough was the issue. And it sounds like he was healthy. That's reasonable. Bill Guerin, if it's the same philosophy, this is why he raced down, signed Kirill, because he has said, listen, I started a year without a full training camp, and it was an awful year. I never felt that I got up to speed, which is why it was so imperative for him to get the Kirill deal done ASAP so that Kirill could have as much time during the camp as possible. It's the same for the playoffs now, all of a sudden, in Kirill's eyes. So he's going to have to learn from that and say, hey, I'm going to have to manage my workload if we have to do that, maybe sooner during the season, or maybe I have to not play 21 minutes a night. Maybe over the course of the year, I got to play 19 and just play the long game, whatever that might be. Or maybe he just says, okay, it's different this year. I don't care what I feel like. I want to be feeling good going in, so play me like a horse, and I want to play every single minute. Let's see what happens. But he's going to have to learn from that. And Boldy, we do forget how young he is, and you can't just flip a switch and be good in that regard. There are players, and I'm not taking anything away from Boldy, that are just as good, if not better, that had tougher post seasons. Look at Robertson across the way. Robertson had 100 and some points during the regular season. Who knows how high his ceiling is? 5-on-5, he really didn't do much.
Yeah.
And Boldy couldn't get it going on the power play. That's the difference.
Was Faber a playoff guy, or
He's
is
a playoff
that
guy for sure?
What do the advanced analytics say on him? Because I'm like
one of the best.
So he was just a stud in the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's big for us. I did at one point think that they should play the Rouser if he scored at a Wild game. So that shows how biased I am. But I always wondered, is that just Minnesotans loving the baby in the manger, or was he that good?
I think he was that good and that impressive. I don't think that he was like a game changer in that regard, but he was steady. You could count on him. He made the plays that you needed him to make. He made some plays that you didn't expect him to make.
Yep.
He was fast. He looked strong. I also noticed at times where games started to get away, he started to do a little bit more, which I think is encouraging.
Yeah, he was rushing the puck
It's,
in
it's,
game
it's
6
encouraging.
even.
It's like, okay, so this player understands role. He understands situational hockey. You start to empower a guy like that, and then you're like, okay, this guy is good. And that's what it's been with Brodin. It's like they've tried to empower him to be more offensive, but he just loves the defensive side of the puck so much that he defers to it. Faber, you see that he's maybe got an appetite for jumping up in the play, for doing this, but at the same time, you can totally count on him defensively, and he has the skating ability to get back. Yeah, I think it's super exciting.
Yeah.
That's a huge piece in the core.
Well, this has been a filibuster podcast, and I think it's talked me off the ledge a little bit. So to the fans that stuck around to the end, I'm feeling a little better. I'm not as mad at you now as I was to start the day.
All we need is some vitamin D.
Some
and
vitamin D, some more
smelling
sunshine.
salts.
Yeah.
And the last nacho.
Yeah.
And we'll be, if you can't change the vibe, this is the one bit of wisdom Big K gave us from the center of darkness. You can't change the vibe unless you expect to win. And I will say, a lot of lines I heard was, I wore black to a funeral. I heard that on game 6 from 5 different people. And it would be after the game or whatever. They were wearing all black Wild stuff, but the joke was, I wore black to a funeral. So in that little joke, that little wink is really
The weakness.
the problem, the weakness.
It is. So if you hung out to the end of this podcast, I think there's enough meat on the bone to maybe do one more next week or another time, because we still have to hear from Evison and Bill Guerin before we get into some of these draft ones. So if you want more from Wild on 7th, heck, if you want to roast me for a bit, hit us up on the socials. Let us know what you want. But we appreciate you listening. We're here
Till it's here.